As you may know, especially the last 2 or 3 months, we've been talking about the overarching topic of vision with imagination. We've unpacked that concept quite a bit. Previously, if you were following what we were talking about, you would have seen us talking about vision, discipline of thought, the principle of overview and of insight. We did a phenomenal session, I think a week or two ago, on snakes and ladders, and we also spoke about foresight. Now today, what we want to do is we want to unpack and talk about success grounded in courage. And just before the call, that Bertie and me just unpacked, and I love doing that, just saying, what is this all about? And we wrote down 4 words, and we're going to unpack that today and delve into the mind and the wisdom of Bertie Le Roux. Hello, Bertie, how are you?
Good day to everyone. Very well, thank you, Ivan. Glad to be here. Thanks
Awesome.
for the opportunity once again.
Yes, thanks for the honor. It's absolutely amazing. I'm so excited about these topics because I think if you go, Bertie, I really feel if someone goes into your archives and listens to everything, I'm excited for you because I believe that if people go and do that, go into your archives and listen to your podcasts and your videos that we've done the last year or so, I think they'll experience the illumination, like you'll sit at the feet of a sage and just salivate, hearing all this wisdom and stuff coming from the man with the gray hair. I really think, the purpose and the big overarching transformation that we're looking for is transformation in people and obviously in companies as well. So let's get started. We're going to talk today about success grounded in courage. We unpacked it a little bit just before the show started, and I'm very excited about this topic. Before we start going into those concepts we spoke about, Bertie, do you want to maybe just introduce this to us?
Yes, thank you. Everything that you refer to, that I've been speaking about over these years. I mean, since 2019, we started embarking on this road, and even my Tuesday morning sessions on Platinum Gold Radios at 10. For those that don't know, there have been more than 100 appearances there altogether up to date. Is that you part with experience. Because if you've got an inquisitive mind, sometimes it gets you into trouble, but most of the time it gets you out of trouble because you've been there and you've experienced a lot of things in your life, the good and the bad and the ugly. And somebody spoke to me the other day, said, what is the definition of wisdom? And, I was grasping at all big words, and he says, no, it's the ability to distinguish between good and bad, what is right and what is wrong. Simply that. What's right and what is wrong, or what's good and bad. That's wisdom. And that is the wisdom that I gained, and I believe I gained through the University of Life. The fact that I did spend some time at the university and also did some distant learning later on in my life, that was good foundations. But the true experience that one lived through is what gains and gives you the wisdom, and that is what I'm passionate about sharing. And at the end of the day, you just got to believe in yourself, and believing in yourself takes a large chunk of courage because you've got to back yourself. It's like any sportsman. You can talk as much as you like, but you still need to deliver the goods, and somebody must be able to benefit from that. Or your team need to benefit from you delivering your goods when you're a sportsman and you're a team player. That's important. So courage is it's really a great foundation stone that you built on your future on, and that is courage.
Awesome. Bertie, let's go delve deeper a little bit into courage. If you go and look for a definition of courage, you'll probably find something like the ability to do something that frightens one, strength in the face of fear, in the face of pain or grief, how would you, if we had a dictionary and that it was the Bertie Le Roux version, what would you say courage is in the context that we're talking about today?
I can just say amen to what you've defined it as, because that is really the ability to follow your beliefs, follow your heart and follow sometimes your brain over your body, and just persist and stick to your guns. And that is the gun. Doesn't matter what puts you off and where you go. In the face of, as you say, in the face of fear, the real courage comes out. And I can tell a lot of stories of my days as a young sportsman, as a even back to school time, and then time that I spent on the border. For those that know me, know that I didn't have that. It's so easy from a physical point of view. But today at 66, I'm up and about, and I'm still doing what I love doing, in terms of sport, cycling, and so forth. But at the early age of 16, that is 50 years ago, doctors made a prognosis and said I would probably be on crutches permanently when I'm 25, because I had a hip fracture that were messed up a little bit, and they couldn't operate, they couldn't fix it. It was just a matter of I had to accept it. What I did do at that time, as I accepted it, after many tears that I've shed in the quiet of the evening and at night, I just decided I'm not going to let it get me down. And that next year, I actually went to the army as a conscript. It was tough. I had a couple of near bad experiences where my hip came out of joint and so forth, but I saw it through. Nobody knew about that other than my mother and obviously my family. I actually in that year ended up playing provincial under 20 rugby, and in those days I was still just hardly 18 years old. But I would consider that as the first act of courage in my life. It might have been based on an element of stupidity, because if the doctors say you're going to be on crutches, who are you to be judgmental and say they don't know what they do? And I thank God for that. I did not believe what they said, and I didn't accept that. So in my definition, that is where I first learned about courage, and that sort of flowed through my life to where I'm at, sitting here talking to you today.
Awesome. You just referenced their physical courage, and there's a blog post on courage called on a blog called The Lion's Whiskers, and they talk about 6 types of courage. Let's unpack this a little bit. The one is physical courage. This is the courage that most people think of first: bravery at the risk of bodily harm, which I think you just referenced there. And when we're talking about courage, we're talking about having bravery in being successful. And often when we had these sessions, I spoke about with you, Bertie, I said a lot of times we are fearful of success because how would that change our lives, and would we able to handle it, etc. And so I'm just going to overview these 6 quickly, and maybe we can delve into them. They reference here physical courage, social courage, intellectual courage, moral courage, emotional and spiritual courage. And I think 2 of those, besides the physical courage, I think we can definitely talk about. For instance, social courage is the type of courage that's familiar to most of us, as it involves the risk of social embarrassment, exclusion, unpopularity, or rejection. That's something that we need to develop for us to be successful, because, like me, for instance, I'm a situational introvert. You wouldn't think so, but I actually like being alone, and I like being by myself, and I like spending time alone. But I am in a sphere or an environment where it befits me, and it's important for me to become maybe an extrovert, or to be a person that activates conversation, starts it, get a room engaging, those kind of things. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that social courage and how necessary that is for us to be effective?
Yeah, if we talk about social courage, what come to mind with me immediately is bullying. And bullying is not just something that happens in school. It happens in the workplace, and it happens over social media nowadays. Much more. That guys talk about the keyboard bullies. Um, in your face, they are a different person, but when they sit behind the keyboard, anything goes. And that is sometimes difficult to handle. And the highest trees does get the most wind, and we must accept that. So, and that in itself takes courage to be able to keep your head up whilst everybody around you is trying to belittling you and to downgrade you and to pull you down to the levels they're at. And as we grow and as we develop and we focus on our passions, because that's important. If you are focused on your passions, in other words, focused on your dreams, in other words, focus on your visions, that focus that you are so passionate about will not be detracted by all these people, all these fears that is not real. Because that is what fear means. It is a perception that is real, and you've got to live through it. And I know there's a lot of people that live through tremendous fears, and there's a name for each and every one, whether it is spiders or whether it's heights and all those kind of things. But if we are focused on where we want to get, we tend to be able to switch that off, to just not be able to see it. And that in itself takes courage, because you got to believe in yourself. That's a paradigm shift that you have to make and say, listen, this is what is important to me. It's all about me in this case. That's self-belief. You build that on the trust, and you build it into trust, and you live your life accordingly. Then any one of those six will not pull you down, and normally there's a combination of them. And often, because we're not focused, we can get bombarded by these, and they hurt us, and we try to get away from that, and we run in circles, and we go nowhere. But you must understand, if you want to fight anything, any danger that is approaching you, the only way to do it is to face it. We're talking about the lion's whiskers, but if the lion were to chase you, the best way for you is to face the lion and do something, because if you run away, you're dead meat. Most definitely. So sometimes it's the courage that allows you to face your fears that makes your fears disappear. And none of those things will pull you back, because you won't allow it.
I think people that were successful and that made it through the large part of the pandemic, Bertie, they had to develop a certain amount of courage and bravery. And one thing that is really stood out for me in the last 18 months was what one of my mentors used this phrase, and I want to position it the right way. A lot of times we look at, we had to change our businesses, the way that we do things. Our products and offerings had to change because the environment changed and the way things change. And, the question might be, why should I do it? Or, there's a lot of pushback towards, for instance, the online meeting and the online environment like we're doing here. But my mentor said something very profound. He said, what's the alternative, right? You have to go and face these difficulties and these difficult times. The people that lost their businesses are people that said, I'm going to quit or I'm going to give up. And the ones that are successful, I think, are the ones that are tenacious and say, I'm going to fight. I might lose some battles in this war, but overarchingly, I'm going to make it. I'm going to push through, and I'm going to, it's going to be better on the other side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's businesses that made decisions very early in the process. I mean, we started off with, wasn't it 6 weeks of lockdown, and we all said, okay, this is going to be exciting. 6 weeks at home, work from home, freedom, all those kind of things that came with excitement, and until it started getting extended and extended and extended, and nobody knew what will be the end state and when will it actually end. And still, people talking about this virus will be with us for the next couple of years. So how are we going to address it? How are we going to change our way of doing business, in the office, virtual offices and all those kind of things? And a lot of companies had actually made decisions early on in this process. And that was sometimes courageous to make decisions in terms of laying off staff, which is not nice, but making certain that this ship of mine can still stay afloat. Doesn't matter what happens. People that make businesses where leadership made decisions out of their boards on salary cuts and all those kind of things to make certain, and they are stronger today than ever been before, because they had the courage to make decisions early. And as you say, it's not the what if question was asked early, and they said, we'll take it head on. We can always improve later on and change the situation. But if it goes belly up and it goes worse, where are we at then? Let's rather make a decision now, whilst we still can. Because whilst I've got the strength to make a decision, I should make the decision. If I'm too weak,
retreat.
It doesn't help to make a decision. I can't fight myself out of that hole. And you're quite right. COVID taught a lot of lessons, and a lot of people came out of that with flying colors. Not yet everybody, but there's a lot of businesses that were struggling before COVID is now shooting lights out. Business that didn't exist before COVID, new startups, and they're really firing on 6 cylinders, going great guns. They were fantastic businesses that closed their doors. And you ask yourself the why question in that. So you can say it was luck, but with courage comes luck, because you create your own luck.
Yeah. The next one I want to talk about, Bertie, I think you'll actually like a lot, and I think it has. It'll probably be your favorite one between all of these, and that's intellectual courage. And just if we look at a definition of that, it would say it speaks to our willingness to engage with challenging ideas, to question our thinking, and to the risk of making mistakes. It means discerning and telling the truth. What do you think of that? That must be like honey to your ears.
That's actually a great unknown to every single one of us. You will only know that you have to make calls and delve deep when you're really at that crossroad. I was listening, last week at a podcast from Discovery Group Risk, if I may say so, and they were unpacking the associated deaths with that COVID brought in terms of the graphs, not necessarily the actual death from COVID, but the associated deaths because of decisions what people made during COVID that impacted them then, but with the impact only going to come in years to come. Like people that was in list for transplants, 30% of them said, because of COVID, I'm not going to go to hospital. I'm not taking this transplant, and they've been waiting for that for many years, or could have been waiting for many years, which impact their health dramatically. But that was a decision they made based on fear rather than based on courage to go and challenge the unknown. And that intelligence that we need, how do you define that? Is that emotional intelligence or is it IQ? I would say it's got nothing to do with IQ. Whether you got an 80 IQ and 140 IQ, what does it matter? In terms of the decision and the impact that it has, how are you approaching it, and how do you follow this thinking? Are you creating a mind map of what if, and you can see the big picture? because only if I do that, then I'm applying intelligence into this decision, and I'm asking myself a question, I'm getting an answer to each of those little questions, leading on to, and it's as a spider web at the end of the day. So that will be my response on the concept of courage that follows out of intelligence. How do I apply it? Because it's really not necessarily IQ. If you go to business, there's business people that people that say, Tony Factor was a guy with dyslexics, and that's in my early days, he was a real person to look up to, but he built an empire out of literally nothing, and everybody expected him to be up to nothing. The cat didn't keep him back, and that's what we need, is people that can think beyond the so-called limitations of IQ.
I want to work this concept back a little bit. There's this question, what gives a person courage? And often the answer is self-confidence. Now, we know that courageous people believe in themselves. They know who they are and what they stand for. They've got strong values. They recognize their personal capabilities. They're confident in meeting the challenges that lie before them. And courageous people are passionate and purposeful. Now, one thing that brings that across our self-confidence, Bertie, and often one thing that I've picked up in working with you is that it's very important that you have a good self-image to get to that place of self-confidence. Do you want to delve a bit deeper into that?
Yes, I mean, if you don't believe in yourself, and if you don't believe that you're great and that you're able and capable, then who's going to tell you that? Sometimes people tell you good things, sometimes people tell you bad things, and if you internalize that, you will live a life according to what everybody else expects from you to do or not to do. The moment you start believing in yourself, and don't look at any limitations as a limitation, but simply as another challenge that I have to overcome, the sky's the limit. But you've given a lot of great words to link to courageous people. I would like to draw that parallel to leadership, to what one can also equate to good leaders, because sometimes we sit with that challenge of, is it leader born or is it leader made? And sometimes there's just some leaders that come out of nothing, and they are just fantastic, and they grow. And the same with courageous people. And once again, I'll tell you a story and my personal experience in terms of when I was on the border in difficult situations. It taught me that I would never know how courageous I am until I'm put in a position where I'm challenged to how courageous I am and how I would respond. And nothing taught me that lesson bigger than being on the border. I mean, there was tough guys, these big guys come from Hillbrow with, and their fun and games was to hit each other and put each other in the hospital, knives and chains and all those kind of things. But when they're in the situation on the border and something happened and you hear a rifle or you hear a mortar or something, those guys become whimpering little dogs trying to find a place to hide. And one would have expected those people to have the courage of their convictions because of their physique. Then you look at the little guys where you can see in their face, for them to just pick up the rifle, they have to exert themselves. Come the situation, that man grows in stature, no physique, just stature. And he takes this situation by its horns. And they become extremely courageous, look at everybody and achieve beyond everybody's expectations. That was just a phenomenal awareness. My own awareness for my own was very similar, but it's slightly different. The strange thing, when I was pushed in a position where, and I was in a hijacked, all of a sudden, the way my body responds, my physical response, is everything happens in slow motion.
Sure.
Absolutely in slow motion. At the border, the same thing happened. I've managed to do so much in the same time. You can't believe it. And if I have to tell people afterwards, I can actually tell them how in slow motion everything around me happened. So come back to courage. I'm saying to you, is once again, maybe you can develop courage. But as I say, by focusing and believing yourself and self-belief in yourself. Because then you'll be able to take that situation. And as I say, you just grow in stature. And nothing will put you down because you are focused on where you want to go. And everybody around you will look at you and saying, what a courageous person. But it started with clarity of purpose. And through that focus, nothing distracted from me from there. And I had the self-belief, trust in myself and my own abilities to take me to the other side. Crucial in business and in every relationship you got is that kind of attitude. But it starts with purpose in this case.
As we land this interview and we get to the end of it, Bertie, when I look at courage and the antithesis of that, or what is opposite to that, often we find words like anxiety or fear. And I want to read two things that I think you'll like quite a bit. The second one I'm going to share is quite lengthy, so we'll get to that in a moment. But there's this question like, what is the opposite of anxiety? And you just mentioned it. You said that is trust. You need to trust in your own core strengths, trust in your resilience, in the process, and trust even in the discomfort of your anxious emotions to deliver the best. What do you think of that?
Yeah. We talk about fear, but the only way to really manage your fear is to take control of your fear. And preparedness is key to that. So you can actually plan ahead of time in terms of the what if question. What if this happened? What if this happened? What if this happened? What will I do? And what should I do? And how should I respond? How should I react? In other words, I'm prepared. I'm prepared for that fear in any sense of that. So I'm not necessarily answering your question directly, but I'm just saying that fear will always be there. Don't for 1 minute believe that people in control is without fear. They've got control of their fear. They've taken control of their fear. Even when you do public speaking, getting on the stage, you are still fearful. You got butterflies in your tummy, but you are in control, and you control that fear, and you put it at its place, and you know how to manage yourself out of it by talking and believing that you are good at what you want to present and what to do. And that applies throughout. Doesn't matter what you want to do. Acknowledge the existence of fear. That is a very strong place to start.
Okay. There's this, it's kind of like a poem or a piece that was written by a guy called Marshall Jones Jr. And I want to read it to you because it brings a thought across of fear and courage, but also what could be the answer to that. We're talking about success grounded in courage, and how do I get that courage, or how do I get beyond that? Because we're also talking about beyondership. And so the title of this is The Opposite of Fear is Not Courage. Fear describes a state, not an action. Courage describes an action. And at the end of this, you'll hear he brings it together by saying that courage is kind of a journey or a path. It's something that you're doing. He carries on here. He says, if you're afraid, you're in a state of fear, Like in that moment, right before you're called to the platform to give a speech or a webinar or something like this, you're sitting there trembling, rehearsing again and again the reasons you're afraid, trying to justify the fear. But then you're called, your feet walk to the podium, and you begin. That's courage. You're still trembling. Your voice might even crack as you start to speak, but you're going ahead anyway. You're acting despite the fear. Fear is the state you're in. And courage or courageous is how you're acting in that state. But what if you could change that state? What if you could move beyond fear? What if you didn't have to do anything courageous because you were just no longer afraid? That would be the true opposite of fear, and that's peace. Peace is a state where you no longer have to act courageously because there's no need. It's the calm, the rest, the inner tranquility where you don't just kill the resistance, you realize it doesn't even exist. And this sounds like something that I think you'll like as well. And at this time, I was shooting for courage. No wonder I didn't get anywhere. Courage is the path, not the destination. It's like when I woke up, the destination is peace. Peace, Marshall. The opposite of fear is peace. The other point of the line is peace. That's the state is peace. What do you think of that? That's like a, like a small thesis written by someone who's talking about courage and, how do I get beyond what I'm experiencing and to the place where I'm successful?
I would like to say that is sketching utopia. The total absence of fear. One could say is utopia. But I'm saying the mere existence of fear brings the best out of people. Because I need adrenaline to get me at my top performance. And if I'm just happy-go-lucky and the state of euphoria, whatever, I am not prepared. I'm nothing. I'm saying I'm in total control. I'm like a butterfly. Nothing worries me. Nothing troubles me. And I say that's not real. That's not life. Life has. And you sometimes can create a situation like that and be peaceful with yourself and quiet, maybe for 5 minutes or maybe for 5 hours for that matter. But I think in terms of what we do and how we do it, we always need a sense of preparedness for the unforeseen. So there's an element of fear that something can disrail this train from its tracks, or where I'm going and what's going to happen. Even I'm driving at night and I believe my motor vehicle is the best make and the best that's out there in the safest car, but it can still get a flat tire. What if it happens? So there's always these kind of things, and that's why I say as a sense of fear is important to bring me to peak performance all the time. And your preparedness, and you prepare for that speech, that talk. The moment you start talking, and you're focusing on what you love doing and the subject that you are passionate about, the fear dissipates. But that butterflies brought me to a very sort of a much more ready state to tackle what I was doing. So I like what you're saying. It's good. But from my perspective, I'm saying I would always want an element of fear, of discomfort, uncertainty, because that will make certain that I am focused on peak performance and not become complacent and sit back and saying, I'm in control. I will never be in total control. And we can spend a lot of time discussing that. I will never be in total control, whether it's COVID or whether it is a stray bullet, doesn't matter. My life can change instantaneously. And I thought I was in control.
Wow. I've got two quotes. I want to end off with these, Bertie. One, speaking about, we've been talking about COVID and the pandemic and so on. I love this. The greatest act of courage is to simply keep going when everything in you wants to turn and run.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Face your fear.
Okay, and then I'll end off with this one by Nelson Mandela. And listen to this. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear.
Amen.
That's a great place to land. Bertie, any final thoughts before we leave today?
No, love this subject, because I mean, it doesn't matter what we do, what we plan in our lives. We must just understand and accept it. So often we get to a point in our lives where you say, I can't go on. And you turn and you run away from the lion, and that's the end of it. If life was so simple and so easy, everybody would have done it and would have been almost perfect. It's not the case. We've learned about a high profile person that's taken his life again, and you ask yourself, why? How big could that discomfort, uncertainty, unhappiness, fear have been, that we turn away from it and just want to run away? How much courage does it take? And we don't even want to talk about the concept of it is said that it's also a courageous person that takes his own life.
Sure.
But let's not go down that road, because that's not necessary. The courageous person faces his fears, challenge it, and learn to live with it, because you need it to keep you at your top performance. And that would be my last message. You need it to stay on the top of your best performance.
Wow. You need courage to stay at the top and to get to the next level. Thank you so much, Bertie. I think this was another phenomenal session. And, I love where you can take literally a sentence or a word and you can bring so much out of that and through it. It was really an honor doing that today. Thank you so much. And for those that's watching, please feel free to post your questions below. And so Bertie can answer them for you. He's been doing that very faithfully. I'm very proud of him, interacting with his audience, asking questions and so on. And we'll see you again next week at Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you very much and bye.